to start out to make the spark plug puzzle, I just started sketching it out on a piece of paper to what it would look like. I already had a pretty good idea in my head, kind of dimensioning it, even though those weren't the final dimensions, just so I could figure out how long I needed to cut my wood at the miter saw. I didn't do any fancy joinery, just a butt joint. So here I'm just measuring my piece to length, marking it, and cutting it. Now, again, as I said, no like fancy miters or any of that, just a butt joint. I think it was strong enough, it's not going to see much stress. Now I'm just laying out where I want my pin location. So I'm using the spark plug and as a reference and then measuring. You want the pins to fall by the threads in that metal part. That's the ideal location. So I'm just marking it out. Okay, now I'm over at the drill press. So I drilled the 3 other holes normally, and now I have to drill this one. I already drilled this one, but you have to drill again at different angles so that the pin has room to swing out. So I just put a block of wood on one end of this board to give it an angle, and I just slid it in further to change the angle. I kept doing this until I got a large enough area for the pin to swing. Now I'm just testing it with a pin, seeing how it works, if there's enough room for it to swing to solve the puzzle. You ideally want this to look like one hole and not make it super wide. And then I just test it in the other hole to make sure it's a tight fit. Now I'm drilling the hole that the pin will slide in to lock the bar in place. I just took it really slow to start out with because I didn't want to wreck it. I went straight down in the middle of the wood, making sure that I didn't come out any of the sides and just going super slow. Now I just cut my pins to length, or my bars to length. I'm using finishing nails because they're the right size and I had some on hand. Now I didn't really measure, I just kind of estimated for the distance and I put it in place and see if it needed to be shorter. I tried to cut them as long as possible and then test fit them and see if I needed to cut them shorter. This worked pretty well. Also, it was a little bit hard to cut them with the bolt cutters. They're a little small for it, but anything would work, like a hacksaw or a Dremel. So the size for the one that doesn't move was good, but the size for the other one is a little bit shorter. So now I'm cutting the one that's going to release. So this one, as I said, will have to be a little bit shorter. I'd recommend using the material that you're going to use for the pin that will slide in the hole, putting that in place, and seeing how short it needs to be in order to allow the pin to slide in there. See, I'm just testing it here, making sure that it's fully seated in there. So now I'm assembling it. So I start just by putting the nails in place. I already have the pin in the hole, so I just cut a small section off that rod that I was using earlier, and then counterbored with the Forstner bit the hole for the magnet. I didn't use any epoxy. I just had the pressure of the wood on top of it hold it in place. And the way it works is the magnet will grab the pin, locking the bar in place. This will hold the spark plug in. And then when you hit the bottom, it releases the pin from the magnet, letting it slide down. Here you can see the magnet. I had it flush with that top of the wood so that it didn't affect the way that the other board sat on it. Okay, so it's done. I ended up drilling a hole in the bottom because before you could just wiggle it out like that, but now it's in there. And to solve it, you just hit it on the table, releases the pin in there, which lets you slide that bar out. Then you can just wiggle that out and you're done. And then you put it back in, set the bar back in there, flip it upside down, give it a hit or something, and it's locked again. Can't get that out, can't get the spark plug out. And so I just clean up the edges with the sander. Yeah, it's done. I'm not gonna stain it or anything because I like the pine.